Archaeologists found the skeleton of a prehistoric child who had survived severe malnutrition, not once, but 3 separate times. Each episode should have been fatal. Each time, something saved them. That child lived to adulthood in one of the harshest environments humans have ever occupied. Whatever was caring for that child knew exactly what it was doing. The question is, what was it? Think about what a modern child needs in their first year alone. A temperature-controlled room, sterilized feeding equipment, scheduled checkups, vaccinations, a pediatrician on call, a crib designed to prevent suffocation, baby monitors, car seats. We have built an entire industrial infrastructure around keeping one child alive, and we still consider it hard. Now, strip all of that away. No hospitals, no formula, no warm running water, no way to call for help. Place that same infant in a hide shelter on the Eurasian steppe at -30 degrees Celsius, with predators outside and winter closing in. And somehow, enough of those children survived to produce every single human being alive on Earth today. The popular image is always the same. Prehistoric parents struggling desperately, losing children constantly, barely holding the species together by sheer biological volume. But the archaeology tells a completely different story, a story of a child-rearing system so sophisticated, so carefully engineered across hundreds of thousands of years that researchers who study it now use words like elegant and optimal, and in some specific ways, superior. Here is the first thing modern assumptions get wrong about prehistoric childhood. Children were never raised by 2 people. The concept of 2 parents alone in a household raising their biological children is one of the newest experiments in human history. For the vast majority of our species' existence, children were raised by what anthropologists now call alloparents, grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, unrelated adults within the group. Every competent adult in the community shared active responsibility for every child in that community. This wasn't charity, it was architecture. Researchers studying the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer populations on Earth, found that Hadza children received direct care from an average of 9 to 14 different individuals on any given day. Not passive observation, active feeding, carrying, teaching, protecting. The biological mother provided roughly 40% of a child's total care. The remaining 60% came from the network. Anthropologist Sarah Hrdy spent decades studying this system and reached a conclusion that stopped developmental psychologists cold. Human infants, unlike the infants of every other great ape, are biologically wired to solicit care from multiple adults simultaneously. The way a human baby makes eye contact with strangers, the way it reaches for unfamiliar faces, the way it smiles indiscriminately at any adult who looks at it. These are not random behaviors. They are recruitment mechanisms. Your infant ancestors were actively building their own support network from the moment they opened their eyes. That is not instinct. That is strategy. But the network alone wasn't enough. Survival in the first years of life required something else entirely. Knowledge. Specifically, a body of accumulated knowledge about infant care so detailed and so precisely transmitted that it functioned as an oral medical textbook, passed from grandmother to mother to daughter across thousands of generations without a single word ever being written down. At Neanderthal sites in Spain and Iraq, researchers have found evidence of medicinal plants, yarrow, groundsel, ephedra, buried deliberately with the dead. Some of these same plants appear in contexts associated with infant care across multiple prehistoric sites. Ephedra, a natural bronchodilator, was being used to clear infant airways tens of thousands of years before anyone understood bronchodilation as a concept. They didn't know the mechanism, they knew it worked, and they remembered. Now here's the part most documentaries skip entirely. The single most dangerous period in prehistoric childhood wasn't infancy. It was the transition to solid food. Between the ages of 2 and 4, when a child moved from breast milk to the group's food supply, mortality risks spiked dramatically. Not from predators, not from cold, from contamination, from nutritional gaps, from the simple biological fact that a toddler's gut is not ready for the full range of foods an adult can process. Prehistoric communities solved this with a method that modern pediatricians initially found alarming when they first encountered it in surviving traditional populations. Pre-mastication. Adults, primarily grandmothers and older women, chewed food to a specific consistency and transferred it directly to the infant. This was not primitive or unhygienic in the way it sounds. Research published in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology confirmed that Premastication transfers not just softened food, but also enzymes, antibodies, and beneficial bacteria that actively support infant gut development. The caregiver's mouth was functioning as a laboratory, processing raw food into a biologically optimized formula, specifically calibrated to ease the transition. The grandmother wasn't just feeding the child. She was building its immune system, and this is where the archaeology becomes genuinely extraordinary, because the skeleton of that child we opened with, the one who survived 3 separate episodes of malnutrition, was found at a site in Portugal, dating back approximately 30,000 years. Researchers identified the malnutrition events through Harris lines, growth arrest markers visible in bone structure. Each episode left a scar. Each scar was followed by a period of accelerated recovery. Something intervened each time, something consistent, knowledgeable, and committed. That level of sustained care across multiple crisis events does not happen by accident. It does not happen without a support network. It does not happen without accumulated knowledge about what a failing child needs and how to provide it. That child survived because an entire community understood that its survival mattered, not just to its parents, but to everyone. Here is what that means at a deeper level. The human childhood is, by biological standards, absurdly long. A chimpanzee reaches reproductive maturity in roughly 10 years. A human takes nearly twice that. That extended childhood is not a vulnerability. It is a design feature. The human brain requires that long to develop its full capacity for language, for social reasoning, for the transmission and accumulation of cultural knowledge. But an extended childhood only works if the community is structured to support it. The alloparental system wasn't a backup for when parents were unavailable. It was the primary structure that made the long human childhood biologically viable in the first place. We didn't develop big brains and then figure out childcare. We developed a childcare system, and the big brain followed. Modern developmental psychology is now reaching conclusions that would have seemed radical 20 years ago. Children raised with high levels of alloparental contact, multiple consistent caregivers, not just 2 parents, show measurably stronger social cognition, greater emotional resilience, and faster language acquisition than children raised in isolated nuclear family structures. The research isn't arguing that prehistoric life was better. It is arguing that the human brain developed inside a specific social structure, and that removing that structure has costs we are only beginning to measure. Go back to that prehistoric infant on the steppe, wrapped in the softest inner fur of an Arctic fox, held against the warmth of a body that was not necessarily its mother's, fed pre-processed food from hands that had fed 100 children before it, watched over by 9 people who all understood that its death would diminish all of them. That child was not surviving despite its circumstances. It was being raised by the most rigorously tested child-rearing system in the history of the species. Every technique refined across thousands of generations of direct observation. Every failure remembered. Every success repeated. We replaced that system in less than 200 years. We replaced it with isolation, with nuclear families, with the idea that 2 people alone in a house should be sufficient to raise a human being from infancy to adulthood. Maybe they can. The species is still here. But the next time you feel the weight of raising a child pressing down on you, understand that the weight was never meant to be carried by 2 people. For 300,000 years, it wasn't. You are not failing to meet a modern standard. You are attempting something our ancestors would have recognized as an almost impossible task, and doing it largely alone. The village that was supposed to raise your child is 30,000 years old. You inherited the child, but somewhere along the way, we lost the village.